Before we get into the episode, I am thrilled to announce that the EntreMD Business School is open for enrollment. The EntreMD Business School is the only school of its kind for physicians who want to build 6, 7, and multiple 7-figure businesses. Over the last 2 years, we have had hundreds of doctors go through the school with unbelievable results. Some of them run brands, some of them run private practices, some of them are coaches, some have other kinds of service-based businesses or product-based businesses. And we've had people come in and cross the 6-figure milestone, cross the 7-figure milestone, cross the multiple 7-figure milestone. You will be in a place where you'll get the coaching, the community, the accountability that you need to thrive as an entrepreneur, especially in the times that we're in. So maybe you've been following me for a while. Maybe you've been getting so much out of the EntreMD podcast and you've been wondering, how can I work with Dr. Una and the community more? Well, this is your chance. Come join us in the EntreMD Business School. It is application only. So go to entremd.com/business to turn in your application. I cannot tell you how many doctors have made statements like this. I recovered my investment in the first week. I recovered my investment in my bank account in the first 90 days. This is the best investment I've made in myself ever. I want you to have that kind of story, not just a story of building a great business that serves a lot and earns a lot, but having a business that gives you the freedom to live life on your terms. So don't wait any longer. entremd.com/business. And now for the episode. Hi, docs. Welcome to the EntreMD podcast, where it's all about helping amazing physicians just like you embrace entrepreneurship so you can have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on your terms. I'm your host, Dr. Una. Well, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the EntreMD podcast. As always, I am super pumped to be in your ears. Very honored that you listen to this podcast, you share it, you review it, and all of that. And in fact, I want to start us off today by reading a review from Just Work. And this review says, "Changing my life," leaves those beautiful 5 stars that I love, says, "Thank you, Dr. Una, for opening my mind and changing my life for the better. I started listening to your podcast during maternity leave and have been amazed at my own transformation in my thinking, attitude, and how I'm approaching my goals. I listen while I do housework, while chart reviewing, and on my way to and from work." Now talk about total immersion, right? "My husband has noticed my positive change since I started listening to you. Thank you for the advice, the inspiring stories, and for helping us physicians start and make a plan." Okay, so Doc, thank you so much for leaving this kind review. I'm so happy to hear that you're having such a massive transformation to from listening to the podcast. And of course, when you're ready and you're ready to come to the EntreMD Business School, I cannot wait to have you. But thank you for leaving this review, for sharing this with me, with the world, encouraging other people. And I'm just going to sit back and enjoy watching all the success that you go on to create. So thank you for that. Now, if you're listening to this and you've not had the opportunity to leave us a review on iTunes, I want to invite you to do that. One is because it really does help us get the word out. EntreMD is a movement. It is a movement of change in the physician community. We have a mission to help doctors become the leaders in the healthcare space, inside and outside the exam room. Our mission is to help them fall in love with medicine again, get rid of the burnout, the loss of autonomy, and all of that, and really to bring doctors to a place where they have true financial freedom. So when you share, when you review, you're really helping us get the word out there. Okay. So if you haven't had an opportunity to do that. That will be amazing. And Doc, thank you so much for this kind review. I'm so excited for everything that's happening with you. Okay. All right. So today I want to come, on and talk about, how I grew my podcast to over 400,000 downloads in 3 years. And I think this is something that is really important to talk about because for physicians, I love seeing physicians own their voices. And so many physician podcasters out there, so many physicians on YouTube, so many physicians blogging and things like that. And I want to share this. So this is like your own masterclass. So you can go create your own massive following. You can go and create your own, massive impact in the world, right? And so just want to take you behind the scenes so you can see everything that I did. And so you can go on and add that to what you're already doing and create massive results for yourself. Okay. So of course, it's a given that the starting point of all of this is that, you have a platform, whether that is a podcast, whether that's a YouTube channel or a blog that you're publishing to at least weekly. Right now, some people do, bi-monthly, and I think that's okay. But if you can do weekly, that is preferred. And the idea behind that is when you create this weekly podcast, people actually would build routines around the routine that you've created. Okay. I didn't have an idea that this would be something that would happen until I started the podcast in the beginning. The first year, we had episodes every Monday. And so it was one episode a week. And I started hearing things like, yes, you're my commute to work on Monday, right? Like, so as I'm going to work, I would listen to you every Monday. Why? Because you publish every Monday. Some other people will say you're my evening walk on Monday. So I walk my dog after work and I have the EntreMD podcast, playing. You listen to the doctor who just said, I'm on maternity leave. So when I'm doing housework, when I'm doing my chart review, when I'm going back home, stuff like that, I'm listening, right? So when you build a routine, people will build a routine around that. So there's a place for consistency, right? And this is just a given, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. If you think about it and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so, like, I don't know how I can create that much content. I have many episodes, how to create your content calendar, your 30-day content calendar in 60 minutes or less. I have, like so many strategies around creating content. As doctors, we are trained to be content creating machines. That's what we are. We create a lot of content every day. If you're a family medicine doc, you're seeing 25 patients a day. Guess what? You talk to 25 patients a day in a structured manner. That's your quote unquote YouTube video. If we stripped the audio out of that, that's your quote unquote podcast. You write a notes. That's your quote unquote blog. So you're creating a YouTube channel, a podcast, and a blog every day you go to work. It's just that it's not being recorded, right? And you were trained in a particular way to create content, right? You have your HPI, and then, you have your review of systems, and then you have your past medical family social history. Then you have your, physical exam, medical decision-making, diagnosis, all of those things. In the same way, there's a formula for your content creation for your platform. So we are already really good at this, right? We're already really good. We just need to learn to do it in a different way. So consistency. And, that's just something that's something that you do. So that's that's not the overarching thing. That's the foundation of it. Okay. So let me give you three things that I did. The first thing is that I understood the difference between a great product and a best-selling product. They're very different. Okay. A great product and a best-selling product. So let me break it down this way. So for a great product, it just means it was properly produced, right? So if you think about a book, it means it was well written. The cover is a really great cover. It means it was properly edited and all of those things. That's a great book, a great product. But the fact that it's great does not mean it will be a best-selling book, right? So if you want a great product, you produce a great product. If you want a best-selling product, you sell the product, right? So I understood that as a podcaster, I have two roles. One role is to create a great podcast. So I'll make sure I'm listening to my audience. I'm listening to where their struggles are. So when I come on the podcast, I'm actually solving problems. It is not fluff. Like I tell people, it's not a fluffy podcast. Like you probably learn more from this podcast than you will in some paid programs that you've signed up for, right? And so we're solving problems. Like here I am talking about how I hit 400,000 downloads. So for your podcast, you're like, oh, I can do this. I can do that. Like you can actually take this and go create wins in your life. The review that I just read, the doctor is saying, my husband noticed the change. It's not just that I think I'm changing, like my husband notices the difference, right? So the product, the EntreMD podcast is a great product. But the fact that it's a great product does not mean that it'll have 400,000 downloads. That requires a different intentionality, which is the intentionality of promoting it, selling people on why they should listen to it, and doing that consistently. So the first thing is a mindset thing, right? Is understanding there's great product and there's best selling product, and they are completely different. They require two different skill sets, and I need both of them. Okay. So if you have a great product that you don't sell, then nobody's gonna listen to it. If you have a horrible product that you do sell, people listen to it once and never come back, right? And so you have to have both of them. They're both critically important. So that's number one. Number two, because of that understanding, I sell people on listening to the podcast weekly. Okay. So every single week, I am giving people reasons to listen to the podcast. I'm showing up, I'm promoting it, I'm doing all of those things. So I'll give you a few ways I do that. I do that through my email list. And so every week I tell my email list, hey, there's this podcast episode that came out. This is why you should listen to it. Or there's this podcast episode that came out, and this is one nugget I talked about. And for the other 4 nuggets, go listen to the podcast episode. Every single week, we have an email going out selling people on why they should listen to the podcast. Yeah. Now, I probably should stop and say this, right? Promoting your stuff, being good at what you do, there is a certain level of quote unquote boringness that goes with it, right? Like, do I need to send an email every week? Yeah. I mean, like, you don't have to, but if you want to grow your show, yeah. Right. So I send an email every week. Okay. So it gives value and then says, hey, for the rest of this, go listen to the podcast. I show up on social media every week saying, this is the episode that went live and this is why you should go listen to it. And so, for instance, I did an episode on how to 10x your investment on any business conference you attend. Really powerful episode. If you haven't listened to it, you definitely want to listen to it. And then I went on social media. I'm like, listen, attending events is really expensive, right? You're going to be away from work. So that's income you're not making. You're going to pay for the flight. You're going to pay for the hotel. You're going to pay for registration and all of those things. But it could be a cost or it can be an investment depending on the way you treat it. And I said, for me, I can trace hundreds of thousands of dollars to specific events that I attend. I don't lose money on going to events. So in this podcast episode, I share 5 things that I do to make sure that I at least 10x my investment on every business event that I attend. Do you see what I mean? So I'm selling people on, this is why you should listen to this episode. Okay. So I do it with my email. I do it with social media. I also, because the content is so high value, I also use it as my library, right? I also use the podcast as my library. And so what that means is if somebody, asks a question and I have a podcast episode that answers the question, I'm like, well, here's one nugget, and I talk about it in this episode of the EntreMD podcast. So I do that in the EntreMD Facebook group. And if you're not part of it, come join us, okay? I do it on the EntreMD Facebook group. I do it in the EntreMD Business School a lot. I do it if I'm in a group where you can share, if people ask questions, I would do that, but it's my own little library. And so I'm very quick to, tell people, hey, you can get the answer to this there. You can get the answer to this there. So we've done a lot of that. Now, this is something that is happening every single week, whether email, social media, using it as my library, things like that. Every single week, I'm promoting. Like, go listen to episode, go listen to episode, go listen to episode. So that's the second thing. Now, the third thing. Now, what I'm about to talk about is like the granddaddy. Is the granddaddy of, promoting your platform, even really promoting your business, promoting your brand. Is just the granddaddy. Okay. And that is showing up in front of audiences that do not know me at least, like on average every week. I say on average because, there's scheduling and all of those things. So if I show up 4 times a month is the equivalent of, once a week. But it's not every single week, if that makes sense. Okay. So it showed up in front of new audiences, people who do not know me. Okay. And so if you are an introvert and if you are a fairly normal human being, this would be something that you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Right? I don't want to do that. But it is the thing that will bring the biggest ROI. Because if you think about what I talked about in number 2, where I'm promoting to my social media, to my email list, using it as a library, this is to people I already know, right? So it's not necessarily to people I don't know. So it's to my audience that already exists. If I want to get in front of new eyeballs, if I want my podcast to get in front of new eyeballs, then I need to get in front of new eyeballs, right? Okay. So things like being a guest on someone else's podcast. So this is something that I do on average 4 times a month. I'll show up on someone else's podcast, give value, all of those things. And then a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to continue this conversation, and they'll come onto the EntreMD podcast. And so that I do 4 times a month. And I've done that for a long time. Be a guest on, someone's IG or somebody's Facebook Live and things like that. Again, people, so this is on somebody else's platform. And they're like, oh yeah, this is really good. I like what she's saying and all that stuff. And they'll come over and they start listening, binge listening to the podcast. Speaking on other people's stages. There are conferences that I've spoken at that if I show you the back end of my podcast downloads, I can say, okay, this is when I spoke, this bump here, this is when I spoke at XYZ conference. This other bump here, this is when I spoke at that conference, right? Because you go to the conference, you speak on stage, people are like, that is amazing. I want to know more. I want to hear more. We live in a binge economy, okay? And then they come to my podcast and they binge away. Guest coaching, as sometimes for some programs, I would be a guest coach in the program and, helping people work through their business challenges and things like that. And after I'm done, people are like, oh my goodness, I want to continue this. And there's a podcast and I'm going to listen to the podcast. And so these are all people who don't know me. And so this leads to growth of my audience, growth of the number of people who are listening to the podcast and all of those kind of things, right? Now, there's nothing that I've talked about that's really rocket science, but I want to weave it all together for you, okay? If you have a podcast, first of all, congratulations. I'm so excited for you. Or you have a YouTube channel or you have a blog. The starting point is understanding you can have a great product. If it's poorly sold, it will be poorly sold. Okay. So you have a great product, but you sell it, right? So producing your content is not enough. You have to sell your content. It's almost like if you're not going to sell it, then don't produce it, right? Because you produce it for people to listen to it, read it, watch it, and get value, right? Okay. So that's the first part. The second part is to your audience that already exists. Don't say, oh, they know I have a podcast, or, oh, they already subscribed or whatever. You have to sell people on listening to it, right? Like that's what you need to do. Okay. Every single week. So that's the audience who already knows you. Then there's the audience who doesn't know you, and you have to go and put yourself in front of them, right? Whether that is being a guest on podcasts, being a guest on someone's IG, Facebook, LinkedIn Live, whether being a guest speaker at a conference, that could be guest coaching, that could be networking, whatever, putting yourself in front of new people. And these are not things that you do randomly. These are things that you build a routine around, right? So that year by year, month by month, week by week, your podcast continues to grow and you continue to touch a lot more people. Okay. Okay. So if you do these 3 things, especially number 3, right? Like number 3 is kind of the thing that makes everything else work so much better. Because once you start putting yourself in front of new audiences, it just dies, right? Like think about a country where people stop having babies because they're like, oh yeah, we have millions of people. We don't need any more babies. Like the second they stop having babies, like the authorities know we have a problem here because the birth rate has decreased. Like they're worried. they're really worried. Okay. So in the same way as entrepreneurs, if we're not going in front of new people, like at the point you stop going in front of new people is the point where your business begins to die. It may not show up till 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years from then, but that's the point where it starts to die. Okay. All right. So what do I want you to do with all of this? I want you to, first of all, congratulations that you're a content creator and that you're a content creator using content to grow your business. And it will grow your business. It will do wonders for your business. The podcast the EntreMD podcast has been such a joy for me because it's my legacy body of work. I'm able to have such a huge, huge, huge impact. And people are able to look and make the decision like, you know what, I really want to take this to the next level and I want to work with her, on the podcast. I know everybody's not going to do that, but the people who are supposed to do. So I want to invite you to make a commitment to grow your platform, and doing that by consistently promoting it to your current audience and consistently showing up in front of new audiences, right? Like consistently doing both of those things. It will change everything. And, the thing about the things that make businesses really successful, again, they're not like super shiny. That's why, shiny object syndrome gets us, because they're not super shiny. There's nothing so super shiny about this, but if you do it, it works. If you do it, it works. Okay. So I want you to make that commitment. You can take these strategies, you can apply them. They will create growth in your platform, will help you have a huge, huge impact in the world. And you will start getting reviews like the one that I just read, right? And so many PMs and DMs and stuff like that. And I also want to invite you to help us get the word out. Now, you heard me talk about Vision 2025 earlier, and we really want to help 100,000 physicians. This is not just something we say because it's cute, but this is something we actually want to do. So I would love for you to do me a solid. This episode, take a screenshot of it, share it on social media, say, hey, this episode, I want you to go listen to it, and I want you to subscribe to this podcast, and here's why. And tag us in it, okay? Hashtag EntreMD. I would love to shout you out and, tell you thank you for being a part of the Calvary, being part of the people who are changing medicine, because everything is about to change, but nobody's coming to help us. Nobody's coming to save us. We are the Calvary, you and me. Okay. We are the Calvary. And so do that and be part of the change that we're looking for in medicine. Okay. So thank you for listening to this episode. I do want you to think about your podcast, think about your YouTube channel or your blog, think about the growth that could happen on it. Think about the lives that could be changed. Think about the business growth that it'll create for you. Think about how you be a better speaker, a better writer because you're showing up consistently. Think about, because 400,000 downloads is amazing. But what's more amazing is that number is not just a number. It represents people. It represents life change. And you can have that too. Okay. So grow your platform. It is within reach. You can do it. And share this episode. And I will see you on the next episode of the EntreMD podcast. Hey, if you love listening to the EntreMD podcast, I want to invite you to join EntreMD On Demand. It is my signature subscription program that gives you access to a library of business courses designed to help you do one thing as a physician entrepreneur, and that is to thrive. Just head out to entremd.com/on demand, and I'd love to have you join us. See you on the inside.